Hi, and welcome to Reviewing with Mrs. Wages. Today's topic is photosynthesis, the molecules and the reaction. Let's get to it. What is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process by which autotrophs, like plants, harness solar energy in order to build food. One such food molecule that plants make is glucose, and glucose is rich in chemical energy. In this picture, you can see that the plant is taking up water through its roots and carbon dioxide in through its leaves, and it's using its chlorophyll and solar energy in order to build products like oxygen gas and that chemically rich sugar called glucose. The big takeaway here is that solar energy is converted into chemical energy that is stored in glucose. And while glucose is certainly important, there are other important molecules such as ATP. So what is ATP? Adenosine triphosphate, also known as ATP, is one of the principal molecules used by cells for energy. The structure of the molecule allows chemical energy to be stored and released easily, thus making it a little more user-friendly than just straight glucose. The big takeaway: ATP stores and releases usable energy for cell activities. So how is ATP arranged so that it can store and release energy so easily? Well, let's take a look. So here is one molecule of ATP, and you can see that it's made out of three main parts: adenine, which is a nitrogen base, a sugar called ribose, and the most important part, these three phosphate groups right over here. In fact, the name adenosine triphosphate comes from the fact that there's adenine, the adenosine part, and the triphosphate refers to these three phosphate groups. And this molecule stores its energy right here. The bonds between the phosphates are where the energy from ATP is actually stored. It takes energy to put the phosphates together, to connect them. So energy is temporarily stored in the bonds between the phosphates. The big takeaway: usable energy is stored in the bonds between the phosphates of ATP. Okay, got it. Energy is stored in the bonds between the phosphates, but how is it released? When a phosphate breaks off, as in right here, a chemical bond is broken and usable energy is released. Now the cell has a supply of energy needed to carry out functions necessary for life. This would be the usable energy that came from this former bond. The big takeaway: usable energy is released when the bonds between the phosphates of ATP are broken. All right, we've talked about glucose and ATP. That brings us to our next molecule and a question. Why are plants green? Plants appear green because of chlorophyll. This pigment molecule is responsible for capturing light during photosynthesis. Chlorophyll is found in the thylakoid membranes deep inside the chloroplast of plant cells. The big takeaway: chlorophyll is a pigment molecule in plants that absorbs light. Sure, chlorophyll loves light, but not all light. Chlorophyll effectively absorbs violet, blue, and red wavelengths of light. You can see that in this diagram. Over here, chlorophyll A and B are absorbing the violet and the blue lights, as well as the red lights at this end of it. Simultaneously, chlorophyll reflects any wavelengths that it does not use, that being green and yellow. So plants appear green because chlorophyll does not use much green or yellow light and reflects it back to our eyes. The big takeaway: chlorophyll uses mostly violet, blue, and red light, not green. And now it's time to discuss the chemical reaction that is photosynthesis. During the process of photosynthesis, autotrophs build food molecules like glucose. This means that certain reactants, like carbon dioxide and water, get rearranged with the help from solar energy and chlorophyll into specific products, such as glucose and oxygen gas. So carbon dioxide and water are the reactants of photosynthesis, and they get turned into the products, glucose and oxygen gas. And again, this chemical reaction can't take place unless the cell has the cellular machinery, including chlorophyll, and also solar energy to drive the chemical reaction. The big takeaway: photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, like any chemical reaction, in which reactants get turned into products. This is the same information, it's just written as a chemical reaction. For photosynthesis, you need 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water to produce 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen gas. To memorize the entire formula, let's say it like this. 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O gets turned into C6H12O6 plus 6 O2. In summary, solar energy is absorbed by chlorophyll and converted into chemical energy, which is stored in glucose and other carbohydrates. Later, during cellular respiration, glucose will be converted into ATP. That's all for now. I hope this helps, and as always, happy studying!